This is the top of the USS Yorktown's island, 3 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean. And something is missing. This is what the same section looked like in 1942. Do you see it now? Something massive was there, and now it's just gone. Now, everyone who's seen the recent Yorktown expeditions has been talking about what's inside the ship. The car, the mural, the armed aircraft. And don't get me wrong, those are extraordinary discoveries. They genuinely are. But while everyone has been looking inside, nobody has been looking at the top. And I mean, let's look at that. The USS Yorktown, like every other fleet carrier of her era, was built with what naval architects called a tripod mast. And I'm not talking about a small piece of rigging. The blueprints tell the story clearly. 3 legs, angled inward, converging high above the island. A central mast rising from that point. And at the top, a multi-level enclosed platform with windows on every side. You see, this structure was the nerve center of the entire ship. From that height, roughly the equivalent of 3 or 4 deck levels above the island, the crew could track incoming aircraft, direct the carrier wing, and coordinate with every ship in the task force. It housed an observation deck, communication equipment, antennas, fire control directors. This was the highest point on the entire vessel, and it was unmistakable, which is exactly what makes its absence so strange. This is what we're talking about right here. Looking up towards the bridge. In the back, you have the smokestack column. But this is the mast. And you can see 2 of the legs. Closer view of the bridge. So the 3 windows. 3 windows. And I've always got to figure out, where is this portion of the shipwreck? What are we talking about? So the bridge. When it comes to the mast, here's another view. The smokestack column, which is the highest point next to the mast, the 3 legs right there. Here's the bridge we were just looking at. Another view. Now, this again from the flight deck, taken, I think, right before the start of World War II. But you can see the smokestack column steps down. So smokestack column steps down, platform. Obviously, here's the mast with the 3 legs, flight deck. So this is an inboard view. This image here was taken during the Robert Ballard expedition when the Yorktown was first discovered. And what you can see here is obviously the island, smokestack column, steps down to this platform. And take a look at this right here, which I believe is the foghorn or the fog signal. This horn right here is going to tell us a lot. So make note of that. Now, this view, the closest I could come up with was this image here. Shipwreck view. World War II view. Smokestack column steps down. There's that platform. And obviously, this is the mast that we're looking for. Looking again. Smokestack steps down. There's that platform. And like I said a few moments ago now, this horn, just to make sure that we're oriented properly. This picture here, smokestack column steps down to that platform. Mast is obviously missing. And you can see right here is that foghorn, that fog signal. There's that fog signal, platform, mast, of course, in the shipwreck view is totally missing, which is this view here. So there's that foghorn. So This lets you know this is an inboard flight deck view of the island. And when you look at this picture here, the mast is supposed to be right behind the smokestack column. But at least in this image, you see nothing. No indication of the stack at all. However, rotating back, smokestack column steps down. The mast should be here, and it's not. Now, let's use some other features just to make sure that we know what we're talking about. The next thing I want you to look at are these windows back here. Now, if you remember, this being the smokestack column, the bridge is up here. These windows are going to be aside, and then the flight deck is going to be over here. So this is the inboard view. The mast should be right here. But just to make sure, make note of these windows. These are the windows that we're talking about. So the mast should be just above those windows. These windows, incidentally, I believe are the flight operations deck. If you've got the bridge right here, which we were talking about earlier. Here's the bridge from the front. Another view of the bridge. These windows are, I believe, what was known as flight operations. Looking at the schematics, the blueprints, you can see the navigating bridge and then the top of the pilot house and air plot. Zooming in, here are the windows, and you can barely make it out, but it's labeled skylight over primary fly control. Here is a side view of those windows, the flight operations area. Bridge is over here, flight operations right here, and the mast should be right there. This tells us exactly where we are. We're looking at the same part of the ship, and the mast just plain old is not there. So what happened to it? When Robert Ballard's team discovered the Yorktown in 1998, the tripod mast was gone. Not collapsed against the island. Not resting on the flight deck. Not buried in nearby debris. Totally gone. And every expedition since has confirmed the same thing. Now, here's what makes that significant. Because we know these wrecks at this depth can be extraordinary time capsules. A car still recognizable after 80 years. A painted mural that somehow survived. A dive bomber still armed. But the most dominant external structure on the ship has completely vanished. So I went back to the blueprints, because once you look at this through the right lens, there are really only a handful of explanations. And each one tells you something different about what happened to this ship. And I ran it by a warship expert who looked at this closely.
I'm Tim Nesmith, ship superintendent for the USS Kidd Veterans Museum.
Okay, so this is the tripod mast on the Yorktown.
Right. Looks like a fighting top for a battleship.
What did you call it?
Fighting top. It's
Fighting
what
top.
you'll see on top of battleship, like Battleship Texas has something that looks very similar to that.
Okay,
Right.
So we know what we're talking about. We're looking for this tripod mast tower. So that's the what. When was it there? The first theory is the most obvious one. Battle damage. You see, at Midway, Yorktown was hit 3 times by bombs. Here's a picture from Midway. The Yorktown's already been hit, and there's the tower right there. Another shot.
That's clear as day right there. Yeah. It was there for the battle. If it's still there after the battle and the Japanese have turned around and left and there's no more attacks coming after this photo, then I think it probably went down with her.
Another factor was the nature of the hits themselves. You see, the Japanese were targeting the flight deck and the ship's ability to launch and retrieve aircraft. They weren't targeting the mast specifically. So battle damage, on its own, doesn't fully explain it. The Japanese submarine I-168 located the Yorktown dead in the water while she was still afloat under tow. It fired 4 torpedoes, 2 of which struck the carrier. The second theory is about what happened after the crew abandoned ship. The following morning, Yorktown finally went under. What I'm seeing here, I think, are the 2 attachment points for 2 of the 3 legs.
That's a possibility.
Here's another view. If we go to the blueprints, the bridge,
right,
stack, there's that platform. So you'd have 2 attachment points here and then 1 in the middle here.
Right.
Okay. Same thing here. 2 legs angled back, 1 in the middle. And
Right.
it looks like this kind of goes down.
Looks like it goes down inside, yeah. Which matches the battleship Texas and her support legs for her fighting top. It does penetrate the deck house.
Okay.
The superstructure.
All right. But where I'm struggling is I think these are the 2 attachment points because, look over here. I think that's a gun mount. Okay.
Okay.
So I think the attachment point is here and here. And the reason I think that is from this side view, you've got these pretty heavy duty gusset shaped things.
Braces. Yeah.
What do you think? I think that's a mounting point for one of the legs.
It could very well be. Oh, there you go.
There's the stack. There's that platform.
Yeah.
You can see the bracing.
And those braces go all the way around it at intervals, crosshairs.
Yeah. You can see the bracing a little better.
Yep.
And now you can
both of them.
Now you can kind of see the potential for a 3rd attachment point, right?
Yes. I think that's your footprint right there.
It looks like these are almost blanked off, and it looks like this could go all the way through the deck.
Yeah, and it's possible those 2 also go all the way through.
But when you look at this drawing here, that goes through the deck. And it goes
right. It does not show that for the 2 in the back, but I would say it could still be a possibility. Yeah, there's your mast, but it doesn't show anything in the back corners of the room for the other 2 legs.
No.
So the other 2 legs might indeed just stop on deck above them.
It kind of supports this view here where it goes all the way down through the chart house.
Yes.
But nothing back here.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's segmented right there, if it's bolted, if it's welded, if it's riveted together, you could have some very big bolts or welding. They had welding as far back as the 20s, might not have been as good or as refined and quick as the welding taking place by the beginning of World War II, and certainly not by the end of World War II.
After this point right here, where it's listing, and then, like I said, it eventually capsized. So reviewing the 3 attachment methods that you mentioned, which was riveting, welding, or the 3rd one, which was bolting, if it capsized and all of a sudden this tower is hanging, so now we're talking about the possibility of bolts, rivets, or welds breaking, and then this falling out of its mounts.
Right.
So the notion that this was just resting in 3 collars with no mechanical fastener or welding,
just by the weight, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I'm sorry, but there are some things like the 5-inch guns that sit on the carriers here, on the battleships, on the destroyers like Kidd. They are held in by gravity.
And that brings us to the 3rd theory. The one that, in some ways, surprised me the most. You see, after Yorktown was hit and before she finally sank, the destroyer Hayman came alongside. The Navy sent a salvage party aboard. Their stated mission was to get Yorktown moving again. But there may have been a secondary mission. As the story goes, the Yorktown didn't sink. It refused to sink. They actually put people back on board to try and get it going again.
Right.
What if I were to throw the notion at you of, if there's sensitive equipment up there like radar or gun directors, fire, what about the notion of them just blasting the 3 legs?
To make sure it goes down?
You see, certain equipment aboard fleet carriers in 1942 was considered sensitive. And I'm talking about equipment that, if recovered by the Japanese, could compromise American technical advantages in the Pacific. The tripod mast wasn't just structural. Based on the blueprints, it was also the primary mounting point for early radar systems, fire control directors, communications technology. It's actually more consistent with Navy procedure at the time than most people realize. Because once you know she wasn't going to survive, the calculation changes entirely. You're no longer trying to save the ship. You're trying to decide what the enemy cannot have. Yeah, would they have taken the time to do that?
I sincerely doubt it.
So if radar was still relatively new and they don't want it falling into enemy hands, you're saying the thought was, look, the ship's sinking. We don't need to blow this because it's going to the bottom no matter what.
Yeah, because deep sea diving at that point was non-existent. So that sort of deep sea recovery wasn't really happening.
But you can kind of see back here, it's like that looks too clean to me to be, oh, we're going to put some charges around the base of this and blow it so that it falls. And if they did blow those legs, it probably would have been more damage right here.
Oh, yeah.
This is where I want to get your opinion about what you think could have happened.
The most likely would be she rolls over, and if it still was connected by the time she fully capsized, if it didn't shear off at that point, then it probably sheared off on the way down as she's going toward the bottom. Because that's a long, spindly trio of legs to hold something that large as it's going through the water. And water, there's a lot of resistance. I could see it snapping off right there at the deck where it meets,
You mean like right here?
Yeah.
Now, the violence of a ship this size sinking, the hydrodynamic forces as roughly 25,000 tons plunges toward the ocean floor. It's almost impossible to fully comprehend. There are documented cases of structures that survived surface combat being completely sheared off during the descent. Most notably, the second turret of the USS Indianapolis, now lying hundreds of yards from the rest of the ship. But here's what complicates this theory. Because if the forces of the sinking were powerful enough to tear away a massive tripod mast, why is so much else still in place? The island itself is still standing. The gun mounts are still in position. The ship's bow, still intact. You see, the selective nature of what's missing is hard to explain by physics alone. So what do you think happened to the Yorktown's tripod mast? Was it battle damage? Did the crew blow it from its mount so that it wouldn't fall into the hands of the Japanese? Did it slide out from the mounts while the ship was capsized and hanging upside down? Or did it shear off as the Yorktown was plunging to the bottom of the ocean? Let us know in the comments. Now, if you want to see what's inside the Yorktown, and I'm talking about the car, the armed aircraft, and the mural, that video is right here. And if stories like this are what you came here for, consider subscribing to History X, because we're just getting started.